Title: The Uninvited. It was Friday night, and my husband Mark was still not home. As the CEO of a bustling startup, his late nights were becoming more of a routine than an exception. It was just after 10 p.m., and the loneliness of our spacious but empty house in the newly developed Eaglewood estate was weighing on me. We had moved in a week ago, eager to start a new chapter in a community that promised modern living amidst serene nature. Ours was the first and only house occupied in the estate, which added an eerie silence to our secluded dwelling. After a hot bath, I was in the bedroom, trying to lose myself in a novel, when suddenly the lights went out, followed by the air conditioning. A blackout. In the pitch-dark quiet of the house, my heart rate picked up. Then came the knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the door. I muttered under my breath about Mark forgetting his keys again and walked towards the front door. Pulling it open, I was met not by my husband, but by a man I'd never seen before. He introduced himself as Luke, a local electrician. He mentioned a call from the estate's security about a power outage traced to a control box in our backyard. Showing his toolbox, he asked if he could fix it. Something about him seemed off, but dismissing it as my anxiety, I led him to the backyard. Luke worked with swift expertise, and within minutes the house lights flickered back to life. As I thanked him, his body suddenly began to tremble violently, his eyes staring straight at me, wide and unblinking. The toolbox crashed to the ground, his forehead beading with sweat. After calming him down, insisting no need for a doctor, he explained it as a chronic condition triggered by physical exertion. His sad story of struggling to support his family while battling his illness tugged at my heartstrings. When he asked to use our landline to inform his wife of his delay, I didn't hesitate. As he dialed, I went to fetch him a glass of water. The calm of the house was a stark contrast to the chaos of emotions inside me. Returning to the living room, I found him in another fit, this time screaming into the phone about someone opening the door when they shouldn't have. My confusion turned to horror when I realized the landline had never been connected. Our house was too new. How was he talking on the phone? As the reality of the situation began to dawn on me, a chilling news flash on the muted television caught my eye. A photo of Luke, or whoever he really was, filled the screen. The anchor described a recent escapee from a nearby psychiatric facility, a man with a history of impersonating service workers to gain entry into homes. My blood froze. Before I could react, his voice sliced through the silence. Turning, I faced him. No longer the trembling victim of circumstance, but a predator with madness in his eyes. He lunged at me, his intentions clear. The struggle was brief. By the time the police arrived, alerted by a neighbor who had seen the suspicious figure enter our house, it was too late for me, but not for him. In a final act of derangement, he took his own life. Months later, the community would talk about the bravery it took to fight him off, preventing further tragedy. But all I left behind was a warning. echoed through news reports and whispered in the wind. When you're home alone, think twice before opening your door to a stranger. Remember, not every help comes bearing goodwill. Sometimes the danger lies in the guise of a savior, and the real horror isn't the darkness, but what lurks within it, waiting for an invitation. Hey everyone. Just wanted to share a crazy experience that still gives me chills when I think about it. It all happened a few months back, but it feels like it was just yesterday. I work at a tech firm, and recently one of our patents quickly made it to the market, earning me a decent profit. So my wife and I decided to splurge a bit and bought a nice house in a fancy neighborhood. Little did I know this decision would lead to one of the most haunting experiences of my life. One afternoon, feeling a bit under the weather, with what I assumed was heartburn or something minor, I asked my driver to take me home early. I got to my house, keyed in, and headed straight for the bedroom to lie down. My wife, who's an actress, was supposed to be at rehearsals, so I expected the house to be empty. As I reached my bedroom door, I heard her laughing and talking on the phone. I thought nothing of it at first, and entered the room to greet her. Her reaction was odd. She seemed startled to see me and quickly ended her call. We chatted briefly, and she mentioned she had to head back to her rehearsals. Before leaving, she made a strange comment about taking care of my heart condition and headed out. My heart sank. I didn't have a heart condition. Curious about the call, I checked the caller ID and dialed back the last incoming number, only to be abruptly told it came from a payphone. Alarm bells started ringing. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My wife's behavior, the mysterious call, it all pointed to something sinister. In the days that followed, my wife kept coming home late, citing her play rehearsals as the reason. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was hiding something from me. After another episode of severe heart pain at work, which felt too real to be just stress, I decided it was time to face whatever was going wrong head on. I came home one day, resolved to confront whatever was waiting for me. That's when I found a pair of bright blue high heels at the door, my wife's. Bracing myself, I walked up to our bedroom. But before I could push open the door, my wife came out, her appearance disheveled, looking like she had been caught in a frantic rush to tidy up. The room was too neat for someone who had been just sleeping, as she claimed. Something didn't add up. My suspicion turned into dread as I thought of where another man could be hiding. It wasn't until I walked out to the balcony that it hit me, a rope tied to the railing. It clicked. Someone could have used it to escape. My mind raced with scenarios, none of them good. Was I being paranoid, or was my life slowly turning into a plot straight out of a thriller movie? The more I thought about it, the more I realized my marriage was on the line. I decided it was best not to jump to conclusions without concrete evidence. Yet the bizarre events didn't stop there. I planned a short trip for work, telling my wife it was urgent. Deep down, I hoped the situation at home would cool down, but fate had a different plan. I returned home late one night to find silence. As I made my way to our bedroom, prepared for the worst, I found nothing out of order. The bed was made, and there was no sign of anyone else. Confused and exhausted, I lay down, only to have the eerie silence interrupted by a sudden noise. It sounded like someone was in the house. In a panic, I searched the house, fearing a burglar, but found nothing. The next day, my wife acted as if everything was normal, blissfully unaware of the terror that gripped me the night before. It dawned on me then. The real horror wasn't a ghost or a supernatural entity. It was living in constant suspicion and fear within my own home. The truly terrifying part, I never found out if my fears were grounded in reality, or if it was all just a series of misunderstandings and coincidences. That uncertainty, the fear of the unknown lurking in my own home, is what haunts me to this day. Thanks for letting me share. Always listen to your gut feeling, guys. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction and far scarier. Dean, Alyssa, stay safe out there. Hey guys, I recently went through an experience that I just have to share with you all. It's pretty chilling, and honestly, I'm still trying to process it all. So, here it goes. I'm a surgeon, been in this profession for a good part of my life. They call me the miracle worker at the hospital where I work because of my high success rate. I've always been passionate about my job, constantly studying and practicing to ensure the best outcomes for my patients. After being one of the first in my generation to return to urban medical practice from rural service, a thing here for career development and sometimes punishment, I dove straight back into the only place that felt like home, the operating room. Now let's cut to the chase. And the chief of surgery handed me a medical file one day, stating it was a high-priority case. A heart surgery, nothing new for me. But as I looked at the patient's name, my heart skipped a beat. It was Laura Green. Of all the people in the world, why her? Flashback to some years ago, fresh out of medical school, I was sent to a rural area for a year. That's where I met Laura, a woman 3 years my senior who made that hard year bearable. She was kind and caring, even saved up to buy me books for my study. We fell in love, and I promised I'd take her back to the city with me, give her a better life. But when the time came, I got scared. How could I bring a country girl into my world? I worried about what others would think, so I left without a word, cutting off all contact. Back to the present, I went to room 9, where Laura was. Seeing her through the glass, I recognized her instantly, even after all these years. However, I avoided meeting her directly, fearing the confrontation and possibly ruining my reputation if she ever found out I was performing the surgery. Over the next week, my mind was a battlefield. I kept thinking about what to do. If she got better and realized it was me who operated on her, there would be hell to pay. The day of the surgery arrived, and it was storming heavily outside. My heart was racing under my mask as I approached the operating table. I know what you're thinking. This is where it gets supernatural, right? No, it's actually when it gets terrifyingly real. As I performed the surgery, a tragic error occurred. Despite all the precautions, Laura didn't survive the operation. It was a rare and unexpected complication. I was devastated. I had to explain to everyone that despite all my experience, I couldn't save her. It was a blow unlike any other to my career and my conscience. Her family agreed to let me perform an autopsy to understand what went wrong. Alone in the autopsy room, with her heart in front of me, the weight of my actions hit me hard. It was an eerie and surreal moment, almost like those horror stories you hear, except this was all too real. The phone rang suddenly, breaking the silence. I answered, hoping for some distraction, but there was no one on the line. After several more calls that ended the same way, my nerves were fried. In my stressed state, I could almost hear Laura's voice begging for her heart back, a hallucination brought on by guilt and regret. But reality often presents horrors beyond the supernatural. The mistake I made on the operating table that day haunts me more than any ghost story. The real terror comes from knowing I caused the death of someone I once loved deeply. So there you have it. My story isn't one of ghosts or ghouls, but of guilt and remorse. It's a heavy burden, carrying the weight of a mistake that cost someone their life. Thanks for giving me space to share. I hope this serves as a reminder of the real-life horrors we can face, especially in a profession where every decision can mean life or death. D title Unavoidable Fate. Ekati. Hey folks. I wanted to share a chilling experience that happened to me, something so bizarre and terrifying that thinking about it still sends shivers down my spine. It's a true story, believe it or not, and it all started one quiet evening at home. Birangki ting sing purong. Shatat, the doorbell rang with an uncanny clarity in the late hours, pulling me out of my lazy evening reverie. I'm Tom, by the way. I trudged to the door, not expecting anyone at this hour, and opened it to find my wife, Linda, standing there. Linda. She hadn't been home for 2 weeks. "Linda, is that really you?" I exclaimed, surprised. She didn't respond, just walked past me with a blank stare and headed straight into the living room. Her appearance was disheveled, wearing the same clothes I last saw her in, a shirt and a long skirt. But what caught my eye was the brown envelope she clutched tightly in her hand, like it contained the world's secrets. Those 2 weeks prior were hell for me. Linda left for work one morning and never came back, leaving no trace behind. I searched everywhere, contacted everyone, but it was as if she vanished into thin air. And now, out of nowhere, she was back home, silent and distant. Hey, Dukic. I tried talking to her, asking where she had been, but she just sat there, staring at the wall, ignoring my questions. At one point, she finally spoke, saying my name with a familiarity that broke the eerie silence, but her next words were chilling to the core. Unavoidable fate. That night, after I managed to get her to bed, curiosity got the better of me. I found the envelope under her pillow and decided to take a peek. Inside was a card with the name John Smith and a phone number scribbled beneath it. Remembering the number, I put everything back, not wanting to upset Linda any further. The next day, I dared to call the number, only to find out that John Smith had died under mysterious circumstances that very afternoon. The connection chilled me to the bone, but what was I supposed to make of it? Over the next few days, Linda's behavior grew increasingly bizarre. She talked in riddles, mentioning makeup for the dead and alluding to journeys I couldn't comprehend. Her fixation on the envelope grew, and whenever I attempted to touch it, her reaction was fierce and aggressive. Driven by a mix of fear and desperation, I called my cousin Mike, who had been my pillar through tough times, including the recent chaos at my company, which Linda and I were both part of. I explained everything to Mike, from Linda's sudden return to her odd behavior and the mysterious deaths linked to the envelope. Mike was as baffled as I was. He advised me to keep an eye on the envelope and call him if anything changed. We agreed that the envelope and its contents were somehow predicting or causing these eerie deaths. But that night, things escalated. Linda presented me with a garment that resembled funeral attire, insisting I try it on. Horrified, I refused and locked myself away from her. In the safety of solitude, I examined the envelope once more to discover new names and numbers belonging to individuals who, upon checking, had also met untimely deaths. The next day, seeking solace and advice, I fled to Mike's house. Overwhelmed, I shared the latest developments, but then a shocking realization hit me. Mike mentioned a name I never told him, revealing a sinister plot against me, connecting my wife's strange behavior and the ominous predictions of death to a takeover conspiracy at my company orchestrated by Linda and Mike. As I confronted the harsh truth, the world around me plummeted into darkness. The story I'm sharing might sound like a dire warning from beyond the grave, or the ramblings of a man driven to the edge of sanity by greed and betrayal. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell rings, but there's no one there when I check. It's just a reminder, a chilling echo in the silence of my house. Unavoidable fate. And that's my story, or at least what I can make of it. A tale of betrayal, a supernatural envelope, and a fate that seemed sealed from the moment I opened that door to find Linda standing there. Make of it what you will, but every word is true, at least in the haunting reality I now live in. Stay safe, everyone.